Hi, my name's Paul and I started a little thing called the Small Change Movement. So basically I was looking for a place to live and I was thinking about getting a mortgage, but I decided maybe not that. So I built a tiny house on wheels which I now live in for the last year, which is that. So it was a bit of an experiment really to see if somebody could build viable shelter for basically the same cost as the deposit that I had saved, and the answer is yes, so it worked out pretty well. I chose the name Small Change Movement for a number of reasons really, because this way of living and this way of building a house costs considerably less than conventional living, like hence the small change. The mortgage I was getting offered by the bank was about 250k. I spent 20 grand in that house, which is even less than I budgeted, and it's super well insulated. I didn't skimp on anything. In fact, I overspent on a lot of stuff. Other reasons I chose the name Small Change Movement are because I made the change from conventional living to much smaller living. I live in a tiny house. It's as big as the bedroom that I was renting in the Portobello before I moved out to lovely Laois and now lovely Sunny Tipperary. And then it moves, so there's a movement in it. And the hope is that this will be an alternative for other people as well, so to start a bit of a movement with it. I'm not saying it's the answer to the housing crisis, but it's certainly an answer to the housing crisis, and I think it's also an answer to the climate crisis for a number of reasons also. And after kind of spending 10 years working in events, largely corporate events, I felt like I could just do something more with my life and that I wanted to do something that had more purpose in it. In terms of construction skills, I didn't really have any. I did know how to swing a hammer and I knew how to use a drill, but I learned more in the 4 months of building a house than I had in the 29 years up to that point. To build your own house and live in it is, it's incredibly satisfying. It's a strange feeling to describe, and it's still really surreal when I go to bed or when I wake up. I do often think to myself, like, this is mad, I made this. And it's a really nice feeling. So it's a solar powered house. It's totally off grid. Since I've lived in it, I didn't have a heating system to begin with because I just couldn't find someone to install one. I have an air-to-air heat system. It's basically an air conditioner like you'd see on the mainland on the continent, and that runs off the solar. It pulls very little electricity. I also power a house of a family of 4, so between us, the 6 solar panels we have gotten us through the summer. All my windows and doors are second hand. The steel in my house is second hand, so I got that relatively easily. What was the biggest challenge I faced? I suppose doing it on my own was a massive challenge. Like I overworked myself. Sometimes I'd work 30 days in a row and do stupid hours, and by the end of the build, like what would have taken me 4 hours at the start was now taking me 8 hours. Like I just got so stupid and so tired half the time. So, I mean, the actual construction work itself was the easy part, you know, that's very linear. I got a lot of decision paralysis because I had planned the outside pretty meticulously, and then when it came to the inside and where things are going to go and the layout, there's a lot of decisions involved in a construction project. And although the house is tiny, you kind of still have all the same decisions you make in a conventional house. So doing all of that on my own, I just got decision fatigue. My favourite part about owning and living in the tiny house is really just having a place to lay my hat that's my own. It's a very surreal feeling to own your own home. I can see why people allow themselves to be subjected to paying massive mortgages, because it's a very difficult feeling to explain. It's also really nice living mortgage free. Like, it just completely changes your perception of money really. When you're not paying rent, when you don't see your wages come in and almost immediately go straight back out on rent. I decided to build a tiny house in Ireland because there weren't many other options on offer. Housing market here is in rag order. The quality of houses on offer is absolutely terrible. I'm from Dublin originally, and what I could afford, it wasn't a viable option for me. I think housing reform will play a big role in relation to the energy crisis. I mean, heating our homes is where most of our energy goes. That's not industrial use. It's hard to imagine how we're going to retrofit every house in Ireland, or who's going to pay for it basically, unless the EU or the government pony up. Like, I don't know how. I mean, it's hard enough to buy a house, yet alone then retrofit it to be passive standard. I know from experience of building my own home that making it from scratch passive standard is obviously way easier. I can't see myself living in a tiny house for the rest of my life, but even if that wasn't what you wanted to do, I could see it as being an amazing stopgap for you when you're in between 20 and 30 and 40 even. Like, if you got one rented somewhere in Dublin, or even owned one in Dublin on a small patch of land, even for 10 years, it could allow you to save up enough money to either buy your own conventional house or to change career, or just take some time to do what maybe you want to do with your life. It's hard to build new houses, but it's very easy to build one of those. It took me 4 months and I'm a complete amateur. It's really exciting to think the next 20 or 30 years of my life, and the fact that I could save a couple of $100 by not paying a mortgage and then reinvest that in either traveling or pursuing a passion or finding another career that I'd be interested in. That's really cool, that's really exciting. It's made me really boring basically, because everywhere I go now I think like, oh, that door frame is class, or I think that, oh, that stonemasonry is really, oh, it's really impressive, you know? So, yeah.